we've had pepper plants in these systems that have lasted multiple years and pulling peppers. This, I guess it's not, there's not, well, this system here had one, we have another system about the same size as this one, and we had a pepper plant in it for a year and a half, and I was harvesting peppers at least twice a week, taking a few peppers out every time when it turned red. And I mean, over the course of the time, I bet I harvested 200 peppers off of that plant throughout the whole course. And it was a really good experience for us. Were you around when we pulled that pepper plant out of there and that tank went crazy? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we pulled that pepper plant out. I hadn't done any cleaning of the system, so I pulled the pepper plant out of the pellets and moved it over to the big system. And it took 48 hours for that water to go pure green. The algae spawn took over and it was like sludge. You couldn't even see through it in 48 hours. So then instead of doing it, normally I would go into panic mode and start trying to clean all that out and do all these different things to change that water out and get that out of there and fix it. So what I decided to do is I had some other plants growing in the other side of the room, so I went and just pulled them out of their systems, and they were just basic lettuces and one other little pepper plant that was real small, and I took 4 small plants and put them back into that system, and it took 4 days, and the water went crystal clear again. So I mean that relationship between the two is amazing to watch in real time like that when you can have. And that's the bad thing about these small systems, but that's also the beautiful thing from a research aspect is with the small system you can see wild swings in the system in a short period of time. Where, I mean, if you've got a 10,000 gallon system and something like that happens, by the time you might notice it physically, it might be way too late and you're going to lose a huge chunk of fish or whatever.
What a good example of biomass ratio, right? How one really mature plant could equal the work of 4 intermediate plants versus a whole bunch of seedlings, right? So just noticing the biomechanical process of what the roots are doing and how no news is good news when you're observing the system, right? That if things all look imbalanced, there's no need to intervene, like I had said. And then there's another aspect towards the future of farming with the electrical engineering and having better lights that are attuned to different crops' specific needs, that their wavelengths and things are continuing to be experimented on in the field, and then the concept of planning your business around when you want to sell the crop, right? That your grow system actually matches your market needs. That's a multidisciplinary lens that needs to be applied more often.
Yeah, that light structure for indoor stuff has really come a long way. So, if you would ask me 2-3 years ago if I thought LEDs were going to be the growth technology of the future, I would have told you no, because they weren't really showing up. But within the last couple of years, a lot of research has been done, and they've figured out a lot of stuff. And I would say now that LEDs are a way better grow option for most plants than the old traditional HIDs. And I mean, you get the energy usage. But what they've done some research on some of the plants, and they figured out like different wavelengths that the sun throws right before sun up and sun down. There's a wavelength of red that the sun kind of produces that basically tells the plant to wake up and go to sleep. So a couple of the LED companies now have been able to get an LED that mimics that, and then they've programmed their lights to actually, at the end of the cycle, it will start throwing that red light, and then the light will shut itself down and continue to throw that red light for about 15 more minutes. And instead of having
like mindfulness practice, get ready to rest.
Right, yeah, and that's really what it comes down to is there's a transition of an even ebb and flow that the sun does. And when we're growing indoors, it's just on and off. So if we can, and so what they're starting to figure out is there's ways that we can trigger these plants to have the same response that would in nature. So we can still mimic the amount of hours that we want to grow to maximize growth rates, but then we can have the plant wake up and shut itself down to do that. So when the lights go off, it kind of puts a little shock in the plant in the sense that it's still holding all those sugars and all of that stuff that it would normally start pushing back down into the root zone and do the other things when the plant goes to sleep for the night.
Right, it activates your metabolic process.
Right, so then when the light just comes on out of the dark, same situation, right? So when it just comes on first thing in the morning, then it takes, so the first 40, 30, 40 minutes, I don't know exactly, I guess it's probably plant dependent, but the first amount of time will actually take a little bit longer for that plant to start responding to that light. So if we can figure out a way that we can make a nice ebb and flow system with that as well, so the plants can wake up and go to sleep, but then we do it on our schedule instead of on the planet's schedule, because in wintertime in Colorado it's kind of hard to grow anything. But
So even though vertical farming is kind of heading towards full automation and even robotic planting and harvesting and things at the global scale, we're concerned to continue to connect people back to the food cycle and understanding that we're always connected to nature. And so kind of having this permaculture principles, but in an indoor setting or even a hybrid setting like greenhouses that have passive heating and cooling and utilize as much sun as possible. That those are the ideal scenario for sustainable indoor growth. So these are just examples from Milwaukee of growing power and the grow house in Denver. So we're looking forward to hosting a tour for you next week where you can experience it outside of lecture setting, and hopefully you'll have even more interesting questions by then now that you get fully primed on the context of why we exist and what we're trying to do. So do you have any questions for us today?
I kind of do. You kind of touched on it a little bit. So there isn't really like a ratio of like plants to fish that you guys go by and kind of just like finding how the system works best? Or?
well, so I think that there is ratios, and you could look them up, and there is actual like tested ratios, but a lot of that ratio is really dependent on what the goals of the system are. So if I'm trying to produce plants, so lettuce can be harvested on a 28-day cycle. If everything is dialed in from seed to harvest, it's 28 days. So in order to push that kind of growth speed and all that kind of stuff with an aquaponics system, I now have to do one or two things. I either have to put a ton more fish in it and feed a little bit, or have a little bit less fish and more feed. Where then, so it's really about that waste production cycle. But there becomes complications because you get too much feed. So that last picture that was the grow house up in Denver, they have to go in and clean their filters out and remove the solids out of their filters daily in order to keep their system in balance. So in order to produce enough nitrogen, and they're not doing some of the other methods that like are starting to come into like offline mineralization chambers and stuff like that. This technology is moving so fast that there's still a lot of people that are doing it in the zone that don't know these kind of principles, so they're not taking advantage of their own waste profiles. So as to your question, it really comes down to what the system is designed for. Those ratios change and fluctuate based on that.
Like do different fish produce different amounts of ammonia and different plants, so
Right.
different traits?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So there's all of those come into the cycle. So as far as I know, there's not an exact formula that says this many plants, this kind of numbers, because all of those factors come in, right? So if we're growing tomatoes, tomatoes they feed like crazy. I've watched tomatoes in this system. It was actually in this system right here before we tore this down and changed it. One of the rendition cycles, I had a tomato here and a tomato like right there. And what we started noticing is as the tomato got big, stuff right down line from it would start to die off. That tomato at the top of and then we did it on the zip grow tower too. We had a tomato at the top of one of them and a tomato at the bottom of the other. The tower with the tomato at the top, everything below it yellowed out and was doing horrible.
Greedy feeders, yeah.
And then the one with the tomato at the bottom, all the lettuces above it were doing great, and the tomato was doing mediocre. So you can actually see within those little zones that like you have a lot of effect based on the plant. So then you have to kind of find that equilibrium of what you're trying to do with those plants. In the big system that I built after we tore that one down up there, and built the bigger system, that's where I use red wigglers in the root system. So then they help to transfer some of the extra solid waste that makes it into that chamber. They go through there and do their normal composting thing, but then their waste stream is in the water column. So they're also helping with that process of breaking down stuff and adding more nutrients to the system.
So when you come for the tour, we'll give you some more specific jargon around the technical terms of how the system works, like the bell siphon or the different pieces and components of the system. Today we're kind of going through the overview. And then yes, this is the 2017 first CBASE students design. It was kind of interesting that I did not expect this. The PVC pipes worked really well for the first 2 weeks of the plant's growth. And then the root zone became so large that it displaced the water and it started flowing out from the holes. So there's a lot of parts of innovation process too that are just unpredictable until you get to that prototyping phase.
I have another question. So you talked about grow house having to filter some of their biomass out. So do you use filters in some of the smaller scale? Or?
Yeah, so like for example on this system, right, on Isaiah's system that they designed, the media bed pellets become the actual filter.
Okay.
So the idea is that so if has anybody had fish tanks? Anybody else had fish tanks? You know, like how often? I mean, you're having to do a water change on that quite often, right? Once a week usually, and that's because you have a filter that's this big for your however many gallons of water. So the filter that's on my 4 tanks now is 8 foot long by 2 feet wide by 1 foot deep. So essentially with an aquaponics system, so the reason they have to do so much out is they don't use the media bed technique. All of these, this is just a trough on the ground that water flows through, and there's floating styrofoam that floats on top and the plants dangle in there. So with this kind of system, they have to have a pre-filter system because you don't want those biosolids getting out into this raft system because then they just uptake in the roots and you can end up with root rot and low anaerobic zones and those kind of zones because of the way that the rafts work. The water moves so slow, there's no aeration in there, and it's basically just uptake from there. Where by using the media beds with the bell siphon, is getting so much oxygen in there that the solids are actually going right into the media bed, and then the worms help take care of the solids once they go in. So my system doesn't really have an actual biosolid removal point. I have built into the system where if for whatever reason we decided to try to push it and see how much we could really grow on what kind of cycle and change the system. I could add one, and I would add one into the system in order to do that, because then I feel that there would probably be too much solids for the worms to take care of fast enough, and then you start to displace that amount of water again, and now you've only got 100 gallons going through your 300-gallon system because there's so much waste involved with it. The worms can't do it as fast. So it really kind of depends on the size of the system, how much you're feeding, all those different things. But in their system, all theirs is a very older system. It was built, 10 years ago? So the technology that they were using 10 years ago was very simple. So they have a very small pump that just houses a flow valve, and then it goes into the fish tank, through the solids filtration, into the rafts, and back around. So they don't have any ebb and flow, they don't have any air lifts, they don't have any of those other technologies that help move the water and help aerate the water throughout the zone.
We'll cover all the different types of aquaponic growing methods, the NFT and the DWC and all these acronyms when you come for the tour. Okay, we'll explain why some crops might prefer one system over the other. And even with these small tanks, there is a small sponge filtration that you have to cleanse probably once a week.